Okay, everybody. I'm Anthony, one of the organizers of World IA Day, and I'm going to introduce Wendy. You got a full introduction to her at the opening remarks, but let me briefly introduce her for the sake of the recording. Wendy Johansson is a global product experience leader and entrepreneur. Her work focuses on building equitable environments for underrepresented people to thrive in tech. I'll let her tell you more about herself. Thank you for coming to World IA Day, Wendy. Take it away, please.
All right. Thank you, Anthony. And hello, good morning, afternoon, or whatever time we like to call this to everyone involved. Wonderful well, I can't see you this morning, but wonderful to know that you're out there. Thank you for having me. I'm going to chat with you a bit today about something that's incredibly passionate to me, which is building teams. And in particular, as Anthony mentioned, my focus for the last 25 years or so has been building equitable teams and products. I am currently a co-founder at a health tech company where we focus on the underserved Hispanic community in the US. And prior to that, I have been building companies and opening up ecosystems in different places so that people can have more access to the technology, be able to impact those things that change their lives, their parents' lives, the lives of the people around them, as well as being able to ungatekeep access to, for example, big things like FANG companies when I worked at Amazon building an apprentice program. So you see some examples of that here, but I'm really pleased to be here and really try to tie in information architecture to how we think about people, how we think about teams. So as we're talking about that today, I'm going to start off by telling you a little about the theories of the teams. And we're going to do that by talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which many of you may have heard of, but don't exactly know what that looks like. John Maeda's hierarchy of work. And John Maeda, just for some context, he is a brilliant business technologist and designer. And he has been a mentor, a boss, a friend to me. But he was also the first design leader that I'd worked for. And in the short period of 18 months when we worked together, I learned so much about caring for people. And this is really what set me down a certain path that it's okay to care for your teams. It's okay to put a lot of thought into how you work with individuals and how you put that unit together, because people are much more delicate and more fragile and more individualistic than products are. So a lot of the thought that we put into the work we do, we don't put in the same amount of effort into the people. And John really helped me become comfortable with that concept. So I'm going to cite him quite a bit here today as my inspiration. And then we're going to talk about architecting collaboration. So how do you IA people? Like, how is that possible? How do we categorize them? So we're going to jump into that. And here we are. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is the motivational theory in psychology about the tiers of human needs. And that first tier begins at the base level with those physiological needs: air, food, water, shelter. For me, wearing a lot of pink, and sleep. These are the things that we need to survive. Maybe I don't need pink to survive. But next, we have our safety needs, which really revolve around that personal security, employment, having the resources to survive, health, being able to feed yourself, clothe yourself, shelter yourself. And as we build up that hierarchy of needs, that's where, once we're safe, once we can survive and can self-sustain ourselves to survive, we need that love and belonging, the friendship, the intimacy, the family connection. And that's where we really, really dive into really thinking about the self as a core beyond, I need to make this human body survive. So how do I create these connections? How do I feel like I'm part of a tribe? And as I kind of graduate up that hierarchy, I start thinking about esteem, respect, self-esteem. What is my status within my tribal unit, within my workplace, within my neighborhood? And having that recognition and strength and freedom of being an individual in that. And from there, you graduate into that self-actualization. I feel like we need the soundtrack here. Oh, I can't do that well, but the desire to become the most that you can be as an individual. I think this is something that's incredibly important as you think about the psychological safety of your teams in the workplace, because what you need to survive on a team is what you need to survive as a team. So that's kind of base. How do you translate some of these into the workplace? So when we think about that, John Maeda proposed this model in some of the work that we authored together in his 2020 CX report, which I call his hierarchy of work. The tiers of psychological safety in his hierarchy of work are needed to be achieved by a team, besides the tools and the conditions that an organization can set. So that really belongs with co-location. In this time and place where we're having this remote conference, I'm based in San Francisco, you're in Pittsburgh and perhaps anywhere else out there, co-location is a strange concept. Technically, we're all co-located on the Zoom right now. We're together, we're coordinating that we can talk to each other through the Q&A, maybe we'll have a Slack later, maybe we'll get emails from the organizers, but what does co-location look like in this model of our world? Hybrid, fully remote, and also going back into office. As we heard, for example, Google said this week, everybody's going back in April. So co-location is really that kind of defined, excuse me, tribal space. So in this day and age, I like to think of Slack as that co-location place. A lot of us have a Slack that doesn't just have your workplace Slack organization in there. Maybe you have one for a community group like Pittsburgh IA, and maybe you have one for other conferences you belong to. Maybe you have one for your D&D group. I know I have one. So you have all of these different things, and they're really these tribes that are kind of co-located within Slack. So I think Slack has really built itself as this interesting model of what co-location can mean for groups in the hierarchy of work. Next up, we have cooperation. And cooperation, it's really earning attention. It's an all-way communication with knowledge exchange. It's very transactional. When you hear that somebody's cooperated as a witness in legal cases, it sounds like they're doing their bare minimal to get involved there and only share with you what they need, but it's still goodwill. It's a sense of connection. It gives us a sense of belonging that we seek. And in that workplace, cooperation is a very good thing. It helps us at least move forward with the least amount of friction that we can without putting in too much work. And that's a basis that we have to define as we think about the workplace. Is people aren't going to come in the workplace, hopefully, with bad behavior. They know that coming in, cooperation, co-location, that's some of the bare minimal in this hierarchy of work. Next up, we have collaboration. Oops, I should actually press it. With collaboration, that's really taking action. It requires commitment. It requires accountability. It requires us to do something. Now we're working together. We're building with each other. And as we start to get there, we really seek what we're ultimately looking for, camaraderie. It's that fulfillment within the workplace. It's that loving teamwork, so to say. It's being able to share the wins and share the losses together. And that makes the work sweeter. So this is kind of our self-actualization at work. When you're enjoying yourself, when it doesn't feel like you finished a work week, when even if the work is hard and you've had these debates and meetings and maybe there's a fire drill to fix, you still feel energized because you're with the people that give you energy rather than take it away. So next, we're going to take a look at this. This is a quote from John Maeda's How to Speak Machine, a book he wrote in 2019. And I really like to think about this quote as summing it up for me about how a team works together. He says, cooperation is about working with another party at arm's length, whereas collaboration is having your arms hugged around each other. The way that I imagine this is having your arms looped around one another, skipping forward with your team like Dorothy and her friends in The Wizard of Oz. That's collaboration. You are moving together as a team, as a unit. You're leaving no one behind. Somebody shorter, you'll lean down and get their arm. Somebody slower, we'll go ahead and slow down and bring them with us. Somebody is out of the office, we'll bring them with us in spirit. And so thinking about collaboration, it is moving together forward as a unit. Collaborating is nothing less than that. And it takes an entire unit of people, how they link together, how they work together to really define that. So as we kind of wrap up talking about these two theories, the hierarchy of work and the hierarchy of self-actualization, what I really want you to think about here is how we take these models of what we need as individuals and really translate and transpose that into what we need as a team, as a unit, what we need to succeed, how we need to put that together to categorize how people work together, to be that kind of structure that they can see, that they can visualize of what is that process, for example, to ship a product or to onboard a new team member or to even interview a new team member. So all of these structures need to be created. And the way that I think about bringing these more abstract theories into the grounded reality that you all know and you're all experts at within information architecture is taking a look at Dan Brown's 8 principles. The principles are based on the understanding that you as architect, your focus is purely the structure, something that can be shown in maps, in flowcharts, in diagrams. That's your job. And you all know this, so I'm just going to breeze through this. To do this, an architect needs to get a good understanding of how that structure functions. And to do that, they have to have complete inventory of the content within that structure. So once these requirements are met, one of the IAA team members can go ahead and begin optimizing the IAA and start using these 8 principles, which you're all familiar with. But again, I'll just review at a high level to remind you on the Saturday morning. So we start with the principle of objects. Content needs to be treated like a living, breathing thing. It has life cycles, behaviors, attributes, and we move into then the principle of choices. Less is more. Don't distract your user. Don't make them come through and make a decision on the multiple ways to go. Keep that number of choices at a minimum. Go ahead and map that yellow brick road out for them. The principle of disclosure. Show a preview of the information that's going to help your users understand what kind of information is there if they dig a little bit deeper. And then the principle of exemplars. Sounds very nice. Show examples of content when describing the content of the categories. So although you have defined, probably through a card sort, through user testing and feedback, exactly what those categories are, you still want to cue in new users, people unfamiliar with your categorization, and give them an idea of what they're going into. And then, of course, the principle of front doors. Less than 50% of your users are going to be coming in through the homepage. So where are they coming in? Are they coming in through a link in the social age? Are they coming in through a Google search? Are they coming in because they randomly typed in the wrong URL? You're going to have to assume that people are not coming in through your beautiful front door where you've set up what they're doing, who they are, what they're walking into, and you're going to have to give them a little context. The principle of multiple classifications offers users several different classification schemes to browse the site's content. Really, the way I think about this from a UX perspective is we're giving people multiple options to find something that is closest to their mental model about how they can actually go through this. And I think that's really important because the way that you and I assume something as an expert in that space is not the same way that any other user of different maturity level, different life contexts are going to have that same experience and mental model. And finally, well, not quite finally, and moving to the penultimate, focused navigation. Keeping navigation simple, not mixing different things. So if something is a direct action, go ahead and put that there, but don't put subcategories or sub-items of those actions up as well. That can be confusing for folks. And then finally, we have the principle of growth, assuming that content on the website is going to grow. You want things to grow. You want things to be organic. You want things to scale. You need to make room for that. I'm a big houseplant fan here in my fake background. And I actually spend quite a bit of time, oddly, repotting my houseplants because eventually they grow into their pot and they become root bound. And when you take them out, it looks like a really well-weaved organic plant mat in there. And you have to make space for things to grow organically, or they're just going to kind of choke themselves out. And I think it's really important to think about your content that way. How you imagine what you're building today and the IA of that is not how it's going to be forever when you have 1,000 users, 1 million users, tens of millions of users. So as you can see, that takes many things that need to go into consideration to build an IA, which again, you all know, this is an IA conference. And I think one thing to really think about here is if we're missing any critical piece of these principles, the business can fail. If we don't continue to maintain each element of these principles and continue to revisit them, the business can fail. And that same mindset really applies to how we talk about and how we build a team. So we're going to slow down a bit now and go deeper into detail about how do we IA people? How do we IA a team? So we're going to apply Dan's 8 principles of IA to a team. We're going to start with the principle of objects. First, what are our objects here? When we think about creating our team, when we think about setting up the information architecture of our team, what's in a team? People. So the principle of our objects here are that people are our content, our team members. They should be treated like living, breathing things because they are. Your team members, especially in their job at your company, they have life cycles from when they were recruited to when they went through interview, to went through first day, to that peak where they join and have impact on their first project, to that part where they get to a promotion cycle. People have life cycles within a company, and oftentimes our teams don't think about that. But people have life cycles, they have behaviors. So behaviors that are ingrained in them based on their life experiences, their previous job experiences, based on the examples of good and bad that they've seen in other people that they've worked with, and they have attributes. So knowing all of this and really thinking about people as these really complex living beings that we need to put as much care into as we do our information architecture is incredibly important. So understanding how each team member is different as unique individuals is really the key to helping you succeed here. So I know a lot of us, when we approach IA, we think about our content and we really dive deep into understanding that. You really need to think about people as the same thing. Next, the principle of choices. Less is more, especially when you're in a live conversation, a live situation, when you're working with people on a day-to-day basis and we have multiple options in our direction forward. Let's have less. Let's give people less to move forward with. And let's have 3 be better than 10, as Mike is saying here. So some of the best managers I know keep their teams focused on the problem they're solving. They help remove other distractions and choices that slow the team down. And what I mean by that is something as simple as give your teams the best tools. Get them, the information architecting tools of choice. Make it easy for them to find out as a new team member, for example, where to get licenses to those tools so they can get their work done. Give them the best support. Narrow their focus so they don't have to worry about all these things around them and really focus on the single thing that they should be hired to do, which is hopefully in the case of you and your teams, being the best IA possible. So the principle of choices can be applicable to the workplace. It's really narrowing down the distractions and the noise. And many of us tend to think of the noise. I know my team does. They just ask for another no meeting day. So 3 no meeting days a week. They think about distraction and noise as meetings, but they don't think about those costly little interactions day to day. Oh, hey, I lost access to GitHub. I lost access to Figma. Hey, we have a new hire. Where do they get this access and license? Or the new hire didn't receive their laptop. All of these are choices that people have to make, and you want to narrow all of those little costly distractions down so they can do the thing that you brought them on your team to do. The principle of disclosure. I really like this image. It's a guy peering over the fence. And he looks a little nefarious doing it, but I think disclosure, when I like to think of it, it's the sense of curiosity. It's the sense of what is there. So give your team the ability to poke into the layers of information around them in your organization. Why decisions were made top down. So as an example, when somebody comes in and says, hey, it's time to refocus our strategy. And rather than B2C, we're going to now focus on B2B. Well, that's a big change. Most of your team members, they're going to be there wondering, why did that happen? Some of them are probably secretly thinking, Well, that's dumb. I mean, I can think of a better strategy than that. And really, when people say, I don't agree with that, they're asking, why did it happen? And so give your team that ability to poke into those layers of information, whether they come from top down, whether they come from the outside or around them in their peers, on the other teams that they're collaborating with. Why did engineering just take a week off to do a whole reorganization or an offsite? Why did our marketing partners over here just decide to redesign the website, which we just redesigned 6 months ago? Why do we keep doing this? They need the context of that information on, and even better yet, they need the ability to poke deeper if they want to. Some team members are happy to just say, all right, I trust you. I trust our leadership. They said do that, so let's do it. Other people, they want to be part of that decision making. They don't understand it. They want to feel like they were consulted. So give them the ability to dig deeper and give those high level updates as previews of information so that your team knows who they can talk to, knows who they can trust to really, really dig down. The principle of exemplars. In this case, I'm just going to translate exemplars to career ladders. You've all heard of them, hopefully. Career ladders help define the different levels, mid-level, senior level, lead, manager, senior manager, director, and so on. And let your team know what the career ladders are, because it defines each level within your org for them so that they have the optionality to work towards those goals for their own growth. That gives them something to aspire to in this time of the Great Resignation, which I'm sure you're tired of hearing after 2 years. It gives them something to understand their growth and trajectory at a team. More often than not, people leave a company or leave a team because they think there's nowhere to go because it hasn't been defined. So think about those exemplars as that career ladder. What is my space here and what does good look like? Show them the examples of the content, what they can be. So I think that's incredibly important to think about in the context of people, is people just want to know what that yellow brick road is for them and the different paths they can take. But oftentimes they lack the imagination to understand that if they haven't, for example, been in an organization where there have been lead IA information architects or a director of information architecture. So help them map that out and actually see what that is defined. It needs to be non-abstract. Next, the principle of front doors. So you as a team lead, you are not the front door to your team. You are not the end all be all to information architecture or design at your organization. If you have a team, it's because your team opens other doors, which you want. They build relationships with people in HR, in marketing, in customer success, in the sales team. They even build relationships with the customers. And that may be one they regret. The moment a customer finds out they can email you about feature requests, it's over. But we have to think about all of those doors that lead to your team as a whole. What does your team do? Help people understand that. If it's a traditional design team, many people have still a very simplistic, lipstick on a pig idea about the design team. And they might hit you up to say, hey, we need a new t-shirt for our team, or we need a logo for our team. Can you guys do that? And you might say, we're a bunch of UX researchers. That's not necessarily our skill set, but people don't understand that. So what is the value of design and IA at your org? How is it understood? How mature is that definition? I talked to a venture capitalist yesterday because I'm in the middle of going for my Series A round for my startup. And he was very excited to meet me. He started out with, I love everything that I see at Me Salute. It's very clear they have somebody who does all the UX UI so well. And I had to keep smiling because for me, the cringe factor was they're probably UX UI. That's like 2000 or 1990. So it was really an experience of understanding the maturity of this venture capitalist mindset about what I do as a product leader with a design background. But it was also super interesting because at the same time, I was like, this is the first venture capitalist who actually gave recognition to how well our product works and how well our branding is put together to translate into the product and the whole customer journey. And I was really proud of that, even if he used some really simplistic terms to describe me. So help yourself understand where your organization sits in that view of the front door. Do they look at that as a big door, a little door? Do they have no idea your door exists to your team? So the way I also think about that is helping new visitors on your planet, the non-design, non-IA planet, understand who your team is, and more importantly, how best to work with you and your team. Oftentimes people don't approach design because they don't know how to make a request out of us. They don't have the language to talk about it, and they don't want to seem uninformed, or they don't want to be bothering us, or they feel like, okay, this is a really weird, simple thing. I don't know if I should ask them for that. Let me just like make my own wireframe and come and proudly show them. It's really the lack of that language, and people are not understanding how to work with you with their ideas, big, small, immature, fully baked out. And the best we can do is make that front door, or make those front doors very accessible, no matter how, when, where, who people are dropping in from. This can be as simple as a team homepage with a charter and a simple team contact information email alias on an internal wiki. It can be as mature as a whole creative brief request form. It can be anything in between, but having nothing means your front door is not seen, it's unmarked, and the Amazon delivery guy is just going to throw your package over the fence to your neighbor's dog. So don't let that happen. Next up, we have the principle of multiple classifications. And this one I really like to think about in a lot of different levels. So many team leads tend to think about their team members by the skill sets that they bring to the group, hopefully, and not just as an individual to fill a niche that they have at the time. So if you're thinking about your team members as a set of skills that they bring, I think that's fantastic. You can think about the skills and broaden up outside of just design or IA, for example. Think about the other skills that they bring to the table. Maybe somebody's a career switcher and they're coming in from marketing and they're going in as an information architect. What great skills do they bring from their marketing experience? And other things I can think of include people's skills on the soft skills side. When we think about someone who, for example, you have a new team member, I know she speaks at conferences, so maybe when we have team meetings, I might have her present something to the whole company because the rest of my team is really shy about that. So there are different opportunities to think about the breadth of skills that each of your team members have. And I urge you to think outside of the design and IA box. Use other classifications for your team. While the team members themselves, so you think about them for their skills, the team members themselves, they think about themselves as the projects that they're assigned to day to day. What do I have to do today? On what project? With what team that I'm working with? A team that's going to include potentially, engineers, researchers, marketing people, all sorts of cross-functional folks. And so they think about themselves within that pod, that day-to-day, and they think about themselves as, my name is Wendy, and I work on the consumer medical experience at Mies Lud. That's it. That's the thing I work on. They don't think of themselves as their skills often. Meanwhile, other people classify your team differently as humans. HR probably thinks of your team members as a leveled employee. So, oh, that's one of the 2 senior designers they have over there. And that's the 1 director that we just hired in the design side. Great. They think of you as a level, as a number on a team. And then talking about numbers on a team, your finance team, they pretty much just think about your team as a budget and a line item in a financial spreadsheet. How much is that person costing us? What's the overhead? What's the margin on them? What's the value that we get in return? So all of these are valid ways to classify a team member, but I think it's incredibly important for you as a leader, and all of you are leaders out there, by the way, in seeing your team members holistically with these classifications. So you understand kind of their 360 value to the organization in the language that each of those organizational team members care about. So HR is thinking of them as a headcount and as a certain level. Finance thinks of them as cost. Your projects, think about them as the way to move forward and deliver. you think about them as somebody who holistically exists on your team in a certain shape, but they're a piece of the puzzle of your team that kind of forms a whole. So people are multiple pieces of classifications, and I think it's important to consider that. And then the principle of focused navigation. Keep it simple, right? Find a way to define your team to the organization in a way they understand. My actual title as a co-founder of my company is Chief Product Experience Officer. No one's ever heard of that before, except maybe a couple of folks who inspired me to call myself that. When I go out there, get introduced to things, we just go with Chief Product Officer. I don't want to be a special snowflake if nobody understands my terms. I don't want to take over VC meetings, as an example, my venture capitalist meetings, and explain to them what product experience is and how it's the maturity of design, now getting into product and product being like totally null and useless because I have no design skills. It's like, I'm perfect. I don't want to take over time and explain that to people. I want to help people understand me in the terms that they have. So when I think of the principle of focused navigation, I think about how did these people end up in my front door, one of my many front doors, and how do I help them with their own mental model understand who I am and what I do for them. And I understand that's very much a kind of service attitude. And that is a way that I like to think about building a team, is especially as a design or information architecture team, we come together in ways where oftentimes we are seen as a service to other parts of the organization. I could fight that battle, or I can just help people learn to collaborate with us and build trust, and then get to that place of camaraderie and really elevate that hierarchy of work for us. So that's the way I like to think about focused navigation, is keep it simple. Nobody's going to have a simple mental model of who you are and how you are. Bring it in their terms. And finally, the principle of growth. Assume your team members will individually grow, as will your team. Maybe your team is just 4 people right now, and that seems so painful compared to the 100 engineers you have and all the work that needs to come in. It is not forever that you're just those 4 people. Your team will grow, people will leave, people will join, people will maybe career switch into your team, people will grow from a research role into an IA role on your team. So I think there's a lot of ways to think about the principle of growth, but continue to think about your team organically without artificial constraints like budgets or promotions. Although those things definitely exist and they are constraints for you, use your lack of constraint imagination to imagine what your team could be. Because the moment you start thinking in this kind of defeatist, this is how it's always going to be attitude, that's what kills the team. That's what kills the spirit and the sense of strategy and growth that can come with your team. So continue to think open-mindedly about how your team can grow, even if you haven't seen that, even if this is your first team, even if you are the team and you've never been promoted, that future can exist. It doesn't exist everywhere, but it exists somewhere. Great. I just took Dan Brown's 8 principles and I told you about how to apply them to people, very, very people-centric. So how do you turn those random 8 really nice sounding principles about people into something that you can apply to your team? Well, it's the same way that you would, it's the same way that you would if you were developing an information architecture using Dan Brown's principles and you're looking at a website. So let's go through this in 6 simple steps. Not that simple. First, you want to define the goals of your team, just like you would a project. What does each team member need? Setting those clearly defined goals makes the communication with your teams easier. It ensures that every single team member is on the same page and is building a structure that delivers for each person on the team. Next, you want to audit your information. Consider the ways in which your team is already working well. So what are those structures in place? How are they interacting and flowing through the organization today as they work? Take a retrospective approach that can help you identify what to continue in those ways of work, but also what to start and stop. After that, start organizing your existing team and ways of work to optimize for your strengths and discover the team's weaknesses. So the weaknesses of the collective as a whole. You're going to find a couple of things lacking there. Maybe, to use the example of UX research again, we don't do a lot of research. We don't do a lot of validation with real live users. And because that's a skill set that none of our team is comfortable with, maybe we need somebody who does have more experience on the research side and talking to customers. After that, you want to start to adapt to those customers' needs. With those goals and information in place, you want to start talking to those individual team members. You want to identify the gaps between them and within themselves that you can't see in the holistic team. This often surfaces as Maslow's needs. What's the road to psychological safety in the workplace for each of those individuals? And what are those gaps that you need to help fill so that everyone's in the same tier of hierarchy together, arms linked, and moving up and forward? Then we want to analyze the information, revisit and continue to talk with your team and the cross-functional ways that they're going to work. During this phase, you'll begin to uncover ways to make the IA of your team more impactful to the business as a whole. This phase often surfaces as Maeda's hierarchy of work, the team road to camaraderie. So how do we have the camaraderie of our team with other cross-functional teams and be able to define that as impact to the business in what we do? And finally, you can actually start building the IA of your team, because these steps did not tell you how to do that. These steps were just leading you to the research needed and the work needed to begin building the IA of your team. So how do they operate as individuals, as a team? What are those connectors, inputs and outputs that map around the IA of your team structure? How does this IA help meet the goal that you defined and also present a clear strategy of your team to your company leaders? That's when you really start having that light bulb moment of, how do I apply these principles? How do I apply IA? How do I apply my work to thinking about team, about collaboration, about people as a unit rather than an individual or a deliverable? And so I leave you with that in thinking about how you are going to IA your team in this new connected world, connected or disconnected, however you want to see it, and really think about how you could apply the way that you work to thinking about people, how you work with them, how you are a part of them, and really try to re-architect all of those pieces of content and artifacts around there to start thinking about people in the same way that you think of content and structure. I urge you to ask questions now. We're going to go ahead and open up for Q&A. If you'd like to connect, I'm on Twitter as UX Wendy. Find me on LinkedIn through the short URL. And don't forget to pay another human a compliment today.
That's great. I'm going to, while Marina and Jen join us, thank you so much for that presentation. That was very good. And I think we all enjoyed it. So everybody, please use the Q&A to submit some questions for Wendy to answer. There's a Q&A at the bottom of your screen if you're on the Eventbrite browser, as well as, I don't know if we have some questions, Marina and Jen, to bring in from Slack. You guys able to unmute yourselves?
Yes, I will take a look right now. That was amazing. I personally, I work for an agency, and UX is not as much of a priority, so it's kind of difficult to explain the need for research and all of that. So let's see.
And while we wait for these questions, I'd like to call out Zachary on Twitter, who did a minor amazing edit to my my ADA's hierarchy of work, because above camaraderie, you'll know you achieved it when you got to team memes. I totally agree, Zachary. Thanks for sharing that.
Hi, Wendy, this is Jen. There were some comments about the hierarchy of needs and how with all of us working from our home offices and even our children home doing cyber school or online schooling, how Wi-Fi has now found its rank in the hierarchy. It's like oxygen, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It is. I think that actually in this world of thinking about how homes are unaffordable to many of us, and we can't imagine, living in that home that we potentially grew up with, that our parents sheltered us with. I think it's become the new home. As long as I have a Wi-Fi signal over my head and somebody gave me the password and I can do my Zoom calls, I can exist.
While we're waiting for some questions, can I ask you a question? Like what's changed over time? Like before you knew of Dan Brown's principles, what was your approach, do you think?
To teams, my approach before that, I will say it's changed and it's matured over the years. My mode of being a manager before, and frankly a director, was defend my team to the death. Because this was my team. I believe them, I trust them, I will protect them, and I will defend them. And as I've grown into more executive roles and in VP and above roles, and the world has changed into this kind of mixed working environment, I would say that a lot of it is spent with my time telling my team, like, don't assume malice from other people. Assume good intentions. Assume that you were having a bad day, and when you read that person's Slack message to you, you read it in evil swamp witch voice, and you were the one who assumed the bad intentions. Because when I read that same message that you copy and pasted to me, I don't see malice in there. I don't see anger. And so for me, it's really changed into a tone of helping people understand that the relationships they build are much harder now. And the best way that we can do that forward is just assume positive intent. And if you're not sure, ask. Hey, you sent me a message earlier about something I presented, and it wasn't clear to me, your intention of what you're asking for. Maybe you want to share and you're comfortable. It came off this way. And so I think it's really thinking about how you internalize your own mood and the things happening around you and read other people's voices in that. All right, we see questions coming in. So I see one here from Jessica Knott. What's my biggest challenge in starting this conversation at the C level? My biggest challenge in starting this conversation at the C level is that C level peers, to put it frankly, don't care about the people. And that's my biggest challenge, is their job, for example, as a CFO, as a chief operating officer, as a CEO, is not to care about the people. Their job as a chief product officer, chief technology officer, is to ensure the 99.99% uptime of the product and the delivery of that to the customers. There are very few people here who care about the people. Even your chief HR or people officer, they're there to legally protect the business, not your people. And I think that's been my biggest challenge in the C-suite as I've evolved there, is trying to understand, is there a place for somebody like me that thinks about the team as individuals and as a collective unit and as an organization? Is there space for somebody like me? And that's the reason I did call out John Maeda early on in my talk, is he really showed me that there can be people in the C-suite, there can be leaders who aren't just brutal and thinking about the business, and you can make that space for yourself. He showed that to me in the leadership he had as a chief experience officer at Publicis Group. So it was really interesting, and it really restored my faith after so many years in Silicon Valley of just seeing like brutal people as leaders. And I think it can exist. And that's my biggest challenge. I see one from Jenny. Can we talk about balancing a team's need and other needs? How might a manager balance managing up, down, and across? I think in balancing a team's need and other needs, one of the things I found really helpful is simply to start with understanding what the other needs are. I think often as team managers, we know what our team needs, and we come to the table in a conversation with other peers with, well, my people need XYZ, my people this. And that doesn't take into consideration of where do those needs sit with the rest of the organizational needs? Why have those organizational needs come to play? And so what I will give you there as an answer is come with that curiosity to understand what are the other needs of the business? What are the other needs of other design teams, of the engineering team? Why are things happening the way they are? So that you can understand kind of the ordering of your team's needs and problems in the larger ecosystem of your organization.
Wendy, we have a question from an anonymous attendee. So you mentioned trying to simplify your job title to Chief Product Officer when speaking with VCs, et cetera. This person struggles with this sort of issue with describing their role as a product designer to non-UX folks. So how would you define a product designer role to non-UXers?
I would start with this, which is within the product design community, we all know what PD means. And we've helped ourselves and each other cheer each other on about, yes, product design, let's move from that UX title, let's get over there. And then we go talk to other people and they're like, product what? You're a product manager? Or what, you're a designer? No, which one are you? And that's actually the mental model that a lot of people bring when they hear product design. So I would use that same language. You know what a product manager is, you know what a designer is, or like you guessed, smash them together. I understand the entire journey holistically of where the user is doing something. If I was just a designer, you would ask me for a new sign-up flow and I would give that to you. If I was a product manager, you would ask me for a sign-up flow and I would tell you why we need to do that. And I would help you prioritize that. As a product designer, I bring that complete picture so that I understand where that sign-up flow sits within everything else. And I ensure I'm not designing something in a silo. I think about the product as I design.
Very cool. We have a question from Cynthia. For organizations that are growing, where the career paths are evolving, what might be some of the ways to give team members confidence about their future paths?
That is a fantastic question. And that not only plagues startups, but it also plagues companies where they're really starting to see the value of design and starting to slowly invest in it after, people being the only two designers there forever. I would look at models of other organizations that have similar structure or size to you that have started to evolve that way successfully in the last couple of years. Trying to hypothetical something to someone that they don't see or understand is very difficult. So I often look back to the community. I'm part of something called On Deck Design Fellowship. I teach there. I'm a program partner. What we do there is we answer a lot of these questions. People often come in and actually ask the community for help, which is like, hey, I'm at a really, really big company. I just started the design team a year ago as me. And then I hired 2 people and they don't understand how we grow because they've never worked at a company that has a good design team before. Like, how do I show them that? And so other people will jump in and say, hey, I was in a similar position a year ago. Let me share with you, how we've grown. So show them tangible paths elsewhere so they can understand, if not within your organization, that this does exist somewhere and it is doable.
Amazing advice. Alina asks, how do your principles apply to different companies with different UX maturity? Do you need to adjust the approach if the company is low in UX maturity?
Absolutely. I once gave a talk on the levels of UX maturity in much simpler terms. And when you have an organization with incredibly low UX maturity, that's when I try more assimilating. And I mentioned this several times. I try to use the language of the organization to describe who we are, what we are, what our team is, and how to work with us. So we try to adopt existing models within the organization. And if you're working within an organization that's much more design mature, you can go ahead and bring your artifacts and bring your structures in that are best defined for your team and share with the broader org. So it's that, to me, it's the spectrum of, am I adopting other people's language to help them understand in their terms? Or, hey, are we mature enough here that we can go ahead and have a bigger conversation in my terms? It's that kind of spectrum.
Wendy, this is Jen. We have another question. How does one start the conversation about having the team or the organization meet their own individual needs? A lot of accessibility and accommodations are only available by navigating the medical system, and there are barriers to getting a diagnosis. Oftentimes, self-diagnosis isn't acceptable, but that doesn't make someone less needing of it. So how can we ask for what we need when we don't have the documents from an external source to prove that we need those things? Do you have advice for that?
Absolutely. This is a very real situation I handled in one of my teams recently. And I'll start off the high level of documentation this way. Documentation is needed once HR is involved. Well, that's pure and simple. Before HR gets involved, I think there are ways to not need to jump through those hurdles. And those include, if you're lucky enough, having a manager or other leader or lead within your organization that you feel comfortable and safe with in sharing that, these are some of my needs and this is how we can adapt those into my working life here, and have them be that advocate and champion for you. Now, I realize that is a very lucky person with someone who has a leader in their organization they feel they can trust. So I'll give a third route to that, which is look again outside for examples. Kind of like an earlier question about, how do we convince people when there is low maturity or, a team hasn't grown before? Look for examples of how it has been successful outside in adapting and bring those examples inwards. Because I think a lot of organizations, in the same way that these barriers exist of, you have to get documented, you have to go find that specialist, and, it takes months and months and months. It can be very, very unimaginative on their end of how to solve and create a workspace for somebody to thrive who has different needs. And so give them examples of how other organizations and workplaces have done that, so they don't have to do the thinking. It's oftentimes that we bring a big problem to people, and it's not that they're saying no, they're just saying, no, I don't have the time to think of a solution for you.
Just want to mention in the chat, Jessica said that you're quickly becoming her favorite person and she's going to make you a friendship bracelet. So thank you for your honesty and vulnerability and for the hope. See, does anyone else have any questions? Please ask them in the Q&A.
Wendy, this is Jen. I like your suggestion of, and I guess it's a optimistic goal, but of having blackout times where we don't schedule meetings with each other. That's something that's always tricky, especially at companies that are very meeting heavy. So carving out focus time to actually get the work done instead of having meetings to talk about the work that needs done, that's tough. Even a half day out would be really nice.
And I also want to clarify something that my team has brought up constantly, and they're the ones who bring this up on their no meeting days. No meeting day doesn't mean no meetings at all. No meeting days just means none of these dumb meetings with Wendy or anybody else. They're allowed to have meetings with each other, to go ahead and have huddles to say, hey, I'm stuck on this, can you help me? Or I want to review this, come talk about it. They just mean essentially what we call no planning meetings.
So we have another kind of fun question. Can you talk about team memes and running jokes? How does your sense of humor help you as a leader?
My sense of humor helps me as a leader because weirdly enough, I've come to realize that humor is not the most important thing to me, but if I can't have a relationship with humor, like why have a relationship at all? And that's not the right mindset for everyone. But for me, if I can't be this person where I think I'm funny, haha, in some situations, and I can't be myself, then I'm wearing this really weird mask, and like there's no amount of money that people can pay me to wear a really weird mask all day. Like, why not? This is a lot. This is a lot of my day. If I can't be myself, then what's the point? But it does help me because I think it helps my team see that although I can be very focused once we get a meeting started, my team likes my team's from all over the world, so they like to jump in like, Wendy, how was your weekend? How was your conference? How's your cat? How's your pig? And I'm just like, no, let's just talk about the meeting. So I can seem very serious, but then they also realize that I can jump in with jokes about things all the time. So I think it helps give the balance to my tend to be incredibly focused and jump to the conversation, but also just kind of have something that eases off and balances like, oh wait, but she's human.
Truer words never said.
Yeah.
We have a question from Ying. What do you do to help your team gain visibility in an organization? How to advocate for your teammates' accomplishments and skills?
Yeah, and I take that question from a leader or manager perspective. Leader being maybe you're not their direct manager, but you lead the team on a project. In one way, you should see your role as not to celebrate yourself. Yes, although you may have led the project and kind of brought the team where they are, celebrate the individuals and every effort that they've done in there, and don't look for your own validation and pat on the back. Because in celebrating others, you get the joy of people recognizing that you've created something good with people. You've created this product, you've led the team there. And a way to do that is either in your open team channels. We have something called Taco Friday. It has nothing to do with real tacos. It's just one of those Slack apps where everybody gives a taco on Friday, and we have it set on Friday to remind everyone, give tacos to somebody that you want to recognize this week. Other ways to do it in more kind of a top-down fashion is in a team meeting. If you're asked to present what your team's up to, like call out the individuals when you talk about the work that you've done, especially when you're coming from an agency consultancy setting. Like oftentimes you're just talking about the work. Mention the names, call out the people, like, hey, we just finished up this big project with whomever, and we really want to call out that, Jen led this and Marina did that, and this was truly a team effort. Like put their faces on the slide or something, like call them out, remember the humans that were involved behind it.
Two more questions, 3 more questions. Oh my goodness. Let's see. What advice do you have for a designer or any role that doesn't feel like they have enough support from their team to grow? Like, is there something that can be supplemented by external mentorships, or is it worth looking elsewhere?
I think it depends on what you're looking to grow in. External mentorship is a fantastic way to go, both learn skills, craft skills, as well as interpersonal skills, and also get advice and perspectives from people outside of your organization structure. There's things like ADP List out there where you can find mentors worldwide for free, and it's a fantastic organization. I just probably need to be the person who qualifies themselves. I'm an advisor there, so of course I say that, but it is, if you've ever used it. If your company doesn't have that structure, you can also be creative and think of people outside of design. Some of my best mentors through my younger career were, strangely enough, a CTO and then a SVP of sales. Like, I learned a lot about being a person, a leader, from those two gentlemen. Like, very strange when I think back at it, but it worked out for me. So don't constrain yourself just to design if you're not talking about growing in your craft skills.
Wendy, we have a question wondering, what do you find are the main struggles of being a leader or manager? And then how do you deal with those struggles? Thanks.
one of my formative memories of being a leader for the first time, a manager for the first time, was actually this piece of advice the CTO gave me at the company at the time. He said, you're a new UX manager now. Let me tell you, management is a lonely place. And the experience I had there was, now that I was leading a team of people who were my peers before, I couldn't tell them my problems. I felt like, I couldn't extrapolate and talk with them about how do I solve these problems, because oftentimes these problems revolved around them as a team, not an individual. And then I didn't feel comfortable telling my boss or people above me my problems, because clearly they gave me this opportunity. I better not F it up and show them I'm weak. And, initially it's a very lonely place. You don't feel like you have anyone to talk to. And that advice the CTO gave me was to go find other new managers, no matter what organization. So I found a new sales manager, and then I found a new engineering manager, and we kind of created our own new manager group of just like, how do you deal with this? Like, somebody's doing this, like, how do you deal with a situation like that? Because no matter the situation, it's interchangeable within interpersonal issues, within people issues, and how you try to resolve for motivation, team conflict, things like that. It wasn't special to the craft. So that's one struggle I had.
Speaking about conflict, if you're not happy in your team, it's not vibing, and you want to leave, how do you gracefully do that without burning bridges?
I'm only giggling because I kind of mic drop when I leave places, so don't do that. Yeah. I mic drop in a positive way. Let me take two perspectives on your question. You want to leave your team and leave the company. There are great ways to do that. I will, if this person pings me later, I will share a whole Twitter thread, sorry, I'm that person, that I did about how to exit your job and what to say. And it's really just focus on the positives. You don't need to tell them and burn down the bridge of here's every single reason I'm leaving. It's just like, hey, I really enjoyed these things that I succeeded at here, and I added this value, and I loved working with people, but I'm going to go follow this new challenge. Make it about what the things you succeeded on are here, and the transition plan that you're setting up, so the work isn't lost, and everybody can pick up where you're leaving off. Make it focused on that. Don't make it focused about why you're leaving, where you're going, the better things there. Make it about the here and now. It's like, hey, I enjoyed this and I'm doing these things. And then second is, if you're trying to leave that team for another team within your company, okay, that's trickier because you still got to look them in the eye. So the way that I would look at that is just like, oh, this was just an interesting product, user space, way of work. Make it about the thing. Don't make it about, I like the new team better, or I like, working with Marina better, or anything else. Just make it about the product, the non-tangible, the non-people things. So find your excuses around that, and find your excuses in genuine ground, so they don't sound just like excuses.
Thanks, Wendy. Here's another question. This is a good one. You mentioned earlier to look to other companies for good examples of how to grow your own organization. So what are some companies that you've personally been inspired by when building your own company, and why were you inspired by those? Thanks.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to answer this in the context of how I've used those companies as examples. I am inspired by companies that have made public their case studies of how they've grown. Of course, they tell you the shiny bits, right? And a polished up version of the non-shiny bits, because only those companies that have been public about this information are useful to me. Everyone else, I don't know if you're amazing over there at whatever org, but I don't know, and I can't point to it. So I like to look at things like the Designer Fund. They do really good case studies of how design teams build, and how they've been built, and how they've built organizations. And they've done things about Airbnb, the Stripe design team, these of course, startup-y companies, because it's a designer fund. I like to look at that. And then I like to read, humorously, McKinsey reports. I mean, McKinsey iffy, but I like to read McKinsey reports about design, or Frog Design, which is a really great consultancy. They have a really good read on industry as well. They interview, they talk to people about how teams are shaped and formed. The McKinsey reports are nice because it brings larger industry data about how things are done. So any of that is super interesting because it brings hard data and it brings reputation as well. So anything from startup-y tech to agency consultancy to mega evil McKinsey data.
That's great. We're waiting for more questions to trickle in.
You've all had a lot of great questions here and lively chat.
Mike is on fire.
Yeah, so let me, oh yeah, banks love McKinsey data. Doesn't mean anything, but they get to cite a McKinsey report. I just cited a McKinsey report yesterday because it's International Women's History Month. And so I cited a McKinsey report on how women have left the workplace in the pandemic and why in emerging economies. So, and then people said, what do I do with that? I was like, nothing, I just wanted to show this data. Exactly that.
Question. Well, two came in at the same time. I had to figure out which one is better. Just kidding. From Alina, do you have advice for someone who's trying to build a UX team from a team of 1 or 2? Should DevOps or ResOps be a part of it?
Oh yeah, here's that advice. You are DevOps and you are ResOps and you're also the designer on your team and you're leading it and you're also building it and you're also reporting to upper management about how that's going. What? That was a lot, yes, but that's the truth, which is when you're building a UX team from 1 to 2 and slowly scaling that, it's really important to walk in with the reality that at that size and growth and maturity, you're not going to get all the support that you're going to need from having, design ops and everything else. You are going to have to own that yourself. So you're going to have a couple of hats on basically and prove the growth of that team and prove your roles. And as you grow, you'll also learn a lot about yourself. Maybe you want to be a design ops leader. Maybe, wow, you really just want to be an individual contributor. Maybe you just found a whole new space that you didn't know you were good at and you got to practice it and you realize you love it. So it'll help you grow as well. But it's also, frankly, not right for everyone. Growing a new team or joining a startup, it's really tough. I'm going to qualify everything that I've done right here, right now, in a way that I don't often know is right, but I just want to say this. I don't have kids. People keep asking me, like, how do you do all these things? It's like, look, I don't have kids. I've got a cat and a bunch of houseplants. It's a little easier. I'm sorry. I understand that. But that's a question I get also. It's just like, how do you do these startups? And how do you, approach these things? It's like, because I don't have as much things to take care of. And I think the people who have kids, like, wow, you've done an amazing job in the last few years. And the resilience, hopefully, that you have is astounding. I admire it.
Yeah, that's one thing people with kids have is resiliency. A follow-up to that, Alina asked, do you recommend any training or specific modules for that? Sorry, the question disappeared before I got the end of it.
Oh, modules for what?
Hold on one second.
Kids?
I get
it.
Any training or specific resources for that?
Sorry, for growing a team?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
There are a lot of great communities out there. I would look at, for example, startup communities are a really good place to find people who are small teams. A great book, Leah Bewley's Design Team of One. I think it came out in like 2010 or so. Fantastic. She's also a great person. I worked with her, which was super cool, by the way, to go work with somebody whose book inspired you when you were like a wee bit designer, and then work with her 10 years later. I fangirled the whole time. I was embarrassed by myself. But it's a really great book. It's called The UX Team of One, and it kind of talks about how to operate. And although it was written like 10, 15 years ago, it's still very true to exactly that scenario today.
Okay. You have such an interesting background in both UX and VC entrepreneurship. Do you have any advice for UX professionals who want to turn their ideas into startups?
Mm-hmm. It's a terrible idea. Here's my personal actual thought on that. I think it's a good thing to consider starting your idea on the side while you have a full-time job, making it a thing. I don't know why my camera goes blurry. And do it as a side project on top of the full-time job that you currently have until you get traction to succeed, because you'll need traction to prove out to get venture capital to start your startup. And the other thing is, as you're driving 1.5 or 2 jobs, because you have your full-time one and your new side gig, that's going to give you a reality feel of how it's going to be like to run a startup. And if that becomes overwhelming, you can't find a community, other things come up, like that will let you know how hard it's going to be. And I think that's a fantastic way to start, because my other advice is like, don't do it, man. It's really hard.
This question was in the chat, and it's sort of related to what you just said, but I guess for someone with less experience, finishing up UX boot camp, how do you get started? How do you get experience with a startup or in user experience in general?
Yeah, I know exactly the answer to that question. There's great programs out there. So at Amazon, I started this thing called the UX Design and Research Apprenticeship Program. And the whole point of that was there's a heck of a lot of people who apply to Amazon, as an example, who come up from boot camps, but they have no experience, but they keep applying. There's clearly talent out there. What can we do with it? And so what we did was we took them on in an apprenticeship to say, yes, you've potentially gone through this boot camp or self-taught on a free course like the UX Google course. And we want to spend a year with you paid as a full-time employee with a normal full-time, what they call L4 entry-level designer role. So that's the good thing, is you're actually getting paid like a normal person, and train you. So we put you through an Amazon designed UX bootcamp course, basically partnered with them, like bootcamp school. And what we did there was, as you went along the way, you were already seated with the team who was potentially going to hire you when you're done with your 1 year. So you're learning about the team, their subject matter domain, you're doing work with them, they're seeing your growth, and they're investing in you as someone who's going to grow, rather than 3 hours in an interview plus your resume portfolio as it exists today. So there are programs like that. I bring up the Amazon one in detail because a lot of other companies, and this is the one thing I really loved about doing this at Amazon, aside from all the narrative around Amazon, is that they have enough reputation and power to make all the other FAANG companies and big tech companies have FOMO. The amount of people who reached out to me from LinkedIn, Etsy, Shopify, Pinterest, every single other organization after that to be like, so we heard you did this. How'd you do it? Will you tell us? And I was like, of course, like I'll freaking tell you, it's free and you should do it. And it's amazing for people. So I think it's really good that this big name did it, because it kind of forced other folks to be like, oh, fear of missing out, we better do that too. And I think that was a really good thing. So that's one way. And then the second way is startups, because they have no idea what they're doing and they don't know what they're going to do with you, but they'll make you do all the work. So the way that I would phrase this is, think about yourself and how you learn. Do you learn with good guide rails and structures and processes and mentors who already do your work in place? Like, you need those lines to draw within? That's totally cool and fine. People learn that way. And then the other way to learn is, do you learn because somebody dropped you in the ocean and they're like, good luck getting back to shore, sink or swim? And if you thrive in that ambiguity, go to the startup side. If you need swim lanes, go to an existing company that has that structure and is creating that. I think those things do exist. You just need to best think about how you learn and succeed.
Very true. So we do have a question sitting here in Q&A about mentorship. So how do you know you're ready to mentor others? I feel like I can help some junior designers navigate some of those obvious early career hurdles, but imposter syndrome is absolutely brutal.
You're ready because you want to help. That's the first and only thing. You have the right spirit, you have the heart, you want to help. Now, the rest of that's blocking you is you, and that can be fixed. So this is how you can fix that. So there are a lot of books out there around mentorship, the heart of coaching. I want to clarify this thing. Mentorship is different than coaching. I don't know what fuzzy definition of mentorship exists out there. I like to use the word coaching instead, because with mentorship, I am handing you the fish usually. With coaching, I'm teaching you how to fish so you can feed yourself. And so it's giving examples, it's sharing similar experiences you had, it's asking questions why, digging deeper. It's not giving the person the answer. And that may be where you feel a sense of imposter syndrome, is maybe in your mind, mentorship is like, oh, I need to have all the answers to give them. You don't. Good mentorship, good coaching is guiding people to their own solutions and just sharing that with them, new thought processes and your experiences along the way to go find their answers. So I think you're ready.
Do you have any
Wendy?
open mentorship slots?
That's
I do actually.
Oh,
That's really great advice. And I think sometimes, Wendy, people think there's not enough, a big enough delta between their knowledge and the person who they would mentor. But I'm familiar with a group called careervillage.org. It's a nonprofit that matches high school students from low-income communities to mentors for question and guidance. And so that's something that people could look into, because certainly you would feel confident to give advice to a high schooler, and then you could learn from that.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a great call out as well. And also within our industry, there's a lot of people trying to enter, like the earlier question about I came out of boot camp. There's a lot of people trying to enter the space. Just hearing your career journey as somebody who maybe they feel represents them is incredibly powerful in itself.
there's a follow-up. The theme of this event is a connected world, and I'm wondering, in mentoring, what you look to do for connecting your mentee to new communities and worlds of communities.
Okay. I'm going to qualify the answer to this with, I don't mean to sound as egotistical as I may come off in a second. I absolutely don't mean it. Okay, so this world around me is a bunch of people with connections who know somebody who worked at these big name companies. Look, the only company I've ever worked at that you've probably heard of is Amazon, and that was like a year ago, okay? Before that, I would come to the conferences and be like, yeah, I worked at a bunch of startups you've never heard of. I still do work at a bunch of startups you've never heard of. And so these people with these big names on the resumes, or these connections, or, you know, like, I don't know, they party with whoever. I don't do any of that. I don't know anybody. And the way that I approach my mentorship with people is, I now know people. For whatever reason, people now want to know me. It's kind of weird. And I'm happy to open that network up. I'll share an example of that. Recently, somebody reached out to me that I had given some coaching to before about her salary negotiation. And she said, hey, I have a friend who just got laid off and her confidence is utterly destroyed, but like her company just shut down, but she's taking it personally, right? And she's like, she needs a role. Can you help her? Can you chat with her? So I chatted with this young woman. She's a fantastic researcher out of Houston. She's great. And she had just like, she was just so passionate about herself. I don't mean that in a weird way, but she was. And I introduced her to all these people that I knew who were recruiters at Amazon, at Google, at Workday, at whatever. And she ended up getting several offers. And she came back to me and said, I came from this no-name company in Houston doing like energy research for really boring energy bill pay portals. And now I have an offer from Amazon and Google and these other companies. She's like, what the heck? It's like, that's it. It's just the power of a network. And I recognize that I have some of that now, and I'm very happy to pass it along, because those gates need to be unkept. Like, I'm not a certain type of person, but I'm happy to open doors for everybody else.
Well, somebody wants to know where they can find your open mentorship slots.
I don't have a Calendly. I actually do, but I don't. Pitch me. You have my, hold on, LinkedIn short URL. Pitch me. Tell me what you want. That's all.
Nice.
We'll talk. Oh, disclaimer to anybody who added me on LinkedIn. It's probably good to give context. Like, I met you at the conference or whatever. I don't click on things without context. Thanks, Mike. I got that song stuck in my head. Zigga zigga. Is that it? Is that our is that our closing? I can just go zigga zigga.
We have a couple more minutes, so please get your questions in for Wendy.
So, hi, this is Celine. I had a question, but because I'm a host, I can't post in the Q&A, and I think it got lost in the chat. My question is, like, you kind of mentioned like establishing a good front door for your design team for the rest of the company to know how to interact with you. And you gave some examples, but have you seen one that like ever blown you away and we're like, oh, this is awesome, and like such a good experience? You might have built it, or you might have just, you know, been a part of it. Do you have like a really good example for that?
Yeah. One of my best models of a good front door was actually taking the door to everyone. And here's what I mean by that. When at my previous startup, Wiseline, when people onboarded, because I was a co-founder, I was like, okay, all onboarding needs to include the Stanford D-School wallet exercise so that people understand what research and UX looks like. Cool, easy, whatever. Everybody did that when they onboarded. And they had some curiosity about design to help them reset, like, oh, you don't just Photoshop? Okay, cool. And one of the other things we did as we continue to grow in the organization was we took our skills. Actually, it was internal for me because I needed my team to practice their facilitation and presentation skills and confidence in talking to larger groups of people and stakeholders. And so we went around the organization and we talked to HR, we talked to finance, we talked to sales, we talked to everyone, and we said, hey, we do this thing, UX workshops, and we want to help you map out something that's important to you that you need to solve. So HR said, we have no idea what the employee experience journey looks like, but we know people keep leaving after 2.5 years. We don't know why that's happening, other than, you know, exit survey data. Can you help us? So we mapped it out. We sat down and we did a whole, you know, user journey exercise on a giant wall with the HR team, and it really helped them see those peaks and pain points of an employee's experience through this 2.5 years. And we realized that after one promotion cycle, you know, it's your first year, you didn't get promoted. Okay, fine. Second year, wait, still didn't get promoted. This place sucks, I'm leaving, was pretty much what was happening. And so then they improved how people talked about promotions, how they could self-nominate and make cases for themselves, like all these things. And it helped HR better understand what we do and the value of that. So we brought the front door to them. We did the same thing with finance. Everybody was super pissed at finance because nobody likes to do their expense reports or request travel because finance kept messing it up. And so we went to them, we said, hey, we know people are so mad at you and you do kind of suck, but we want to help you fix that. So we went through a journey exercise and looked at the tools with them and the touch points. And we realized that it was actually very hilarious. There was a simple touch point, which was the team email alias that they shared with everyone didn't actually go to anybody. There was an email alias, it was empty, there were no users in it. And so all of these requests for travel, expense reports were going to nowhere, and that's why everybody was pissed all the time. So we helped uncover these things and we showed them the value of design, and we brought the front door to them is how I put it. And that also in turn had a lot of benefit for my team, who I hired a lot of junior designers that I had trained in an academy. It helped them build those skills. It helped them, you know, fill those awkward spaces. It helped them have confidence of like, I'm leading a workshop with the VP of something, like, how do I do this? It's like, no, he's a human too, and he has problems to solve. Help him.
Wow, thank you. Such a great story. Thanks.
Thanks, Wendy. And Celine and I were sharing a brain because I was just going to go back to something someone said in the chat about accessibility and making sure that everyone can enter the front door on their own terms, which is so important. So thank you for that, Casey.
Oops, I accidentally clicked answer live on this, but I'm going to answer it anyway. Do you plan to write a book? That seems like a lot of work. No. No, and here's the other real answer. Maybe I seem helpful and whatnot here and now, but when I think about, I'm like, I don't know, but publishers, how would one do that? Doesn't somebody have to come to me to be like, oh, your thoughts are interesting and maybe you should write it? And I'm like, I don't think I'm good enough, is the actual honest answer. So I'm sharing that because however you're all feeling about your imposter syndrome, like it still happens at every level. Like, I'm like, why? What would I say? Nobody cares. I don't think I'm good enough to write a book. Plus, it seems like a lot of work. All right. I'm going to wrap this up with a piece of advice. that I've been throwing out. And Jenny knows this because she's in on deck. And when I do these on deck fellowship, design fellowship introductions, I tell people this: I will give you a warning if you decide that you want to reach out and ask for my time. Like 99% of the time, I'm going to convince you to quit your job. And then people are like, well, what if I like my job? I don't care. I'm going to convince you to quit your job. Here's why. This is a designer's market, if you're a designer. And what that means is there are more designer jobs out there than there are design people with 2 to 4 years of experience. This is for the UX bootcamp person with 2 to 4 years of experience for a junior role. That's a joke because that's what everybody posts out there. Like, it's 2 to 4 experience is not a junior role, but there are more than enough roles out there, and there are not enough designers out there. That means this is a fantastic time in the world and economy to move around as a designer, to up-level your pay, to get that title that you've wanted, to change your situation, to try new things, if that's comfortable for you. But it's you, you're worth it. I don't know, like the L'Oreal ad, because you're worth it, because you should try. Why not? This is a great time to try.
Cool.
See,
So
everybody's hiring in this chat. There you go. I mean, you could talk to one of these folks. Now you have that warm intro and that connected in.
amazing. I do want to remind everybody to check out Wonder and Slack for more networking. The links will be in your Eventbrite. And yeah, and if you have any questions about that, you can go ahead and post in the chat. So someone, I guess there's one more question in the chat here. 0 design skill. I
think Mike's trying to get a job.
Oh. Thank you. But yeah, this was amazing. Thank you so much, Wendy. And you know, we hope that you'll join World IA Day next year.
Yeah, and shout out to Jenny for inviting me. So thanks so much. It was nice to chat with you all, and I'll see you around.
Thank you, Wendy. Everybody, we're taking a lunch break. You can play games in Wonder, and you can chat and network with people. We're trying to build a Pittsburgh community around information architecture. So make some connections that are going to last until next year and beyond. And then we'll be reconvening at 1 o'clock for our panel of UX YouTubers. So we'll see you at the next panel. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thanks, Wendy. This has been enjoyable and so helpful.
I'm glad to hear.